Hey everyone, thanks for joining. So, we have another edition of the Being Tea guest interview series. And this month, so for the month of April, I want to focus on talking with folks who work in the creative space. So, folks who are makers, folks who are craftspeople. I feel like, considering what we're all navigating and living through right now, a connection to being physically involved with something can feel really good, especially in times when we're insulated, we're isolated too. On top of that, the connection to craft of some sort is something that truly we all have the capacity to tap into. I think that's something that can get overlooked. At first maybe folks are like, oh, I'm not an artist, or I'm not a this or a that. And the idea of like it doesn't have to be something where that's your grand title. That's what you went to school for. That's what somebody else has deemed you, right? Like the ability to create is really innate in all of us. And so I wanted to reach out and talk with folks who do that in really astounding ways that I am just truly in awe of. And my first guest is the founder of, you may have seen these beautiful packages and videos on Instagram and being shared around. Tony Tellin, who is the founder of A Tellin Co., produces these beautiful blends that are, just so special, so unique in terms of the flavors that he's tapping into and the process of how he does that. Like that's super craft spirit. So I'm going to send a little link here and invite Tony on screen to talk about arts and creativity and what that means in his world. Right now, I am brewing up some of this really awesome oolong he has called Holy Smoke, which, holy cow, like this tea is just kind of blowing my mind. I think this is like my fifth infusion of this tea so far. Hi, Tony.
How are you doing? Can you hear me?
I can. Can you hear me?
I can. Wow. Hey, technology, huh?
I know, right? This tea is amazing. This is blowing my mind right now.
Well, thank you. It's funny because that's what I'm drinking too, actually.
Oh, seriously? Oh, cool.
Interesting enough, yeah. It's kind of my go-to lately. I think it's the time of year, right? It just seems appropriate for this. It's not summer, it's not winter, it's just kind of somewhere between. Yeah.
Yeah, that like minerally, and you kind of smell that a bit in the air too here in Chicago, because sometimes people are still, either using their fireplaces or they're busting out a little early barbecue kind of thing. You just have these little wisps of it in the air, and it feels like such a springtime. But then there's that undertone of floral and things starting to come alive again, and I love it.
I always I describe it as kind of a baked rose. And I've never put a rose in the oven. I don't know what a baked rose even really means, right? But to me, it has kind of bready, bakey rose character that I really enjoy, And the thing about this tea I find fascinating too is if you smell just the leaf, it's very smoky, right?
It's super smoky, yeah.
It's super smoky. And, when I first made this on a whim, I thought, okay, I just ruined a bunch of really nice Baihao oolongs, right?
I know, the leaf is beautiful.
And then, yeah, it's gorgeous. And then once I started brewing it, it's funny when I think, I'm just guessing here, but I think, Baihao is actually, and all of the open leaf oolongs are a lot more tightly rolled than they look at first, right? And that's why they're to withstand steeping and why they still open up, right? So when you smoke it, the smoke is getting, it's getting trapped by the outer surface of the leaf, but it's not getting deep into that leaf whatsoever. And so it is pretty, that first infusion is pretty smoky, but then from that point on, it really kind of gets into more of the interior of the leaf and more of its original character, right?
Yeah, it's really cool. It's really cool.
Thank you. Well, I like it too.
So for folks who maybe don't know you very well or aren't aware of your background, I mean, like you've been in tea, like this is almost your whole life. You want to share a little bit about
pretty much
your
my
tea
entire
journey?
life, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, the short I moved to Portland, Oregon. I grew up in Iowa. I moved to Portland in 1998, and I just happened to bump into a company called Tazo, and it was I was riding a BMX bike, honestly, along this walking trail, going into downtown Portland to visit a temp agency to go look for work. I had just moved there the night before. I had arrived, basically. And the next morning I went in looking for work, and I stopped to talk to this gentleman on the side of the road, and he said, "You should apply here. It's a pretty fun place to work." And so I went in and started talking to the shipping manager, who's a guy named Mark, and started that afternoon. And so I started at Tazo Tea in the shipping department, did that for 6 months or so, and then moved into blending. And that's when I started working closely with Steve Smith himself, as he would jot out recipes, hand them off to me. I'd go and physically pull the raw materials from the warehouse and put together the first batch, and then bring a sample to him to taste. And that's when we kind of started working together. And then over the years, kind of developed a shorthand, and we kind of understood each other. And I kind of started to develop an understanding of what he was looking for. And then I started guessing as to what, formulation changes and adjustments he would make, and started trying to get out ahead of him. He was a super busy dude. And sometimes, to be honest, Sue, sometimes it was it was just to help my own day, is if I waited for him to get off the phone to taste a blend of, a batch of tea, I could be waiting for 3 hours, right? So sometimes I would just start to put together what I thought he was going to change, and then go and present it to him. And then that led into procurement, and then that led into quality assurance. And, I was basically his sous chef for the next 15 years.
That's really awesome. So when you decided, as you described, you left your dream job to do something a little bit different, to kind of make something from scratch, to start what is now A. Tellin Co. What was kind of going through your head? Like, what led to the idea of, I think I'm ready to go and start making something new?
And that's good. And, I don't have a great answer for that, to be honest. I mean, I think there's several great answers to that. Maybe is a better way to say it. I started talking to Steve in 2012, I think. 2012, 2013, somewhere in that neck of the woods, about leaving Smith Teamaker. And that I wanted to go and do something. I'm the type that I need to be in over my head. I need to be challenged. I need to be in an environment where I don't know. I need to learn. I need new challenges constantly. I had been working with Steve as his tea buyer and formulator for many years. But in the process of working with him, he was also the vice president, or the president of Tazo, and then, the founder of Smith Teamaker. And so the meetings also included creative meetings, distributor meetings. He was the owner of the company. And so I was next to him during a lot of discussions that didn't necessarily weren't specifically around tea procurement. What am I trying to say? It gave me enough of a sense that I kind of wanted that control in a way. And I wanted to be able to, I wanted to be able to say no or yes wherever I wanted to be quite honest. I just wanted that control. And so it was a challenge, and it was an opportunity for me to define my own, and I think, after Steve passed away, I've actually thought about this quite a bit. And, I think all apprentices want a chance at some point in time to go out and prove themselves to a degree. And I don't know if prove yourself is the right way to express it, but just want ability to go out and see if, hey, here's another way to say it. As Smith Teamaker, he created an amazing company and brand and product line. When he passed away, I tried to step in his shoes, and I think I created some cool stuff too. But it'll always be a question mark of what would the success of those products been had they not the banner of Smith Teamaker to be under, right? And so I think part of me, wanting to go off and do my own thing was to see if I could do it.
Well, and I think too that there's something to be considered about.
Oh, that's it.
That's the legacy of what somebody leaves us too, and that's our responsibility, is when we're in the apprentice role to then take that and to do something with it on your own. I think I can identify a little bit with some of that that you describe, and that I spent 13 years of my time in tea working for different companies and executing someone's vision of what education looked like, and it was fun. It was an amazing period of my life. And then I started to question, well, what if I was able to do some things that no company would want to pay? Like, I teach tea meditation. Who would want to pay somebody to develop a course on that? Like in terms of retail and wholesale and things like that, no one, but I wanted to do it. Right. And I felt like this is how you come full circle. This is how you give back to those who have given to you, is to show I was listening, I paid attention, and now I'm going to go and I can make something, And so otherwise it's just kind of its own little ecosystem, and it doesn't go any further than that person who taught you,
No, well said. And I think, so to build on that, and I guess what I mean by sitting next to Steve in these meetings is, somebody asked me once, what's the most important thing you think you learned from Steve, right? And they assumed my answer was going to be how to make the best English breakfast or how to build flavor profiles. When reality, I think what I learned best from Steve is how to take how to work with what you have, how to start where you're at, do the best you can, how to take a challenge and make it an opportunity, how to, that's what Steve was really good at. And that's what all really great entrepreneurs are good at is, entrepreneurials and startups, don't have the resources of the big guys, but they make things work one way or another. And Steve, I think, was a great example of, he would always find a way to make it work, even if the odds weren't stacked in his favor, and I think that's the thing that inspired me the most. Yeah.
So when you were putting together some ideas, so what were some elements that you knew that you really wanted to explore that perhaps you hadn't gotten to do to the full depth that you really felt either you were capable of, or that you were at least interested to learn? Because this is such in a lot of ways, this is such a different direction than some other things that you've done, but there's elements of it that it is similar,
Well, okay. So when I left Smith Teamaker, I started doing consultant work. And I still do quite a bit of consultant work where, and I help flavor development, formulator type of, projects, as well as some kind of very low level marketing. And, I'm not a marketing professional by any means, but I've been in the industry enough to kind of know how you might go about certain things. So I help in some projects there. But when I decided, okay, I was going to have my own banner, my own label. I don't like to say brand. I don't like the B word really, but when I, whatever you want to call that, when I was going to put something out in the world with my name on it, I put a lot of thought into what is that going to look like. And, what you've seen so far was just going to be the start. Right now with this whole COVID-19 thing, I'm not quite sure where to go right now, but I wanted the basics. And to me, the basics were the teas that I would drink day in and day out. Now, throughout my career, I've made a lot of interesting flavor profiles, and some of them were really cool, but they weren't necessarily teas that, like the Amaro tea that I made. I love that tea. I love that tea a lot. It isn't a tea that I would have a cup every day or 2 cups a day, right? It's a tea that, when you're feeling in a certain mood, or there's an occasion, or you're trying to develop some kind of a mocktail or something like that, then it's really, useful. I wanted these teas to represent kind of flavors or concepts, let's say, or categories of teas that are the type that I really enjoy drinking day in and day out. And then, and when I start to look at what do I really drink day in and day out, they're usually pretty simple blends, right? And so, blends that have 12 to 13, 14 ingredients in it, it's not that by definition I don't like those type of blends. You know, the Smith Teamaker has Meadow. I love that blend, and there's like 14 ingredients in that thing, right?
Yeah, that's a huge blend.
but that's a rare occasion for me. When I start to look at all of the ones that I typically drink day in and day out, they're usually 2-3 ingredients max. So I decided in 2018 it was going to be kind of the quote basics. It was going to be 2 to 3, 4 ingredients max in each one, and I was going to work really hard to try and put as much as I could into each ingredient. And then to answer your question, I think more directly, is the thing that's always appealed to me about tea is it feels like there's not, well, let's say this in a positive way, there's a lot of room to explore that hasn't been explored yet with regards to conditioning raw materials, sorting, scenting, flavoring, smoking. I mean, we've been applying dry and liquid flavorings to teas for many, many years, but it could go way above and beyond that. And in my time working with chefs and distillers and chocolatiers and vintners, you know, you kind of get inspired to try different things, right? Scenting and roasting and smoking, you know, I think are ways where I can apply my kind of DNA or touch to it. And then the other umbrella that was important to me was transparency. And you know, and as transparency continues to become a bigger and bigger thing, and as I tried to figure out how can I provide more details of our recipes in a way that doesn't maybe sacrifice my business, right? So am I afraid of, what am I trying to say? So by doing something, by smoking that by how that you're drinking right there, I had a way to make this kind of mine, to say that this was my product, that I made it. And sure, you could replicate it if you wanted, but not without going through some effort, right?
Yeah.
Whereas if it was just a by how, then that's really not my product. That's the product of the producer in Fujian, right? And if I was to say where that producer is, then a bunch of other companies will just come running and buy the product, and then I lose, you know, that product from my kind of portfolio, if you will, or I lose some of the my ability to market it. I'm not communicating this very well right now, but
it totally makes sense.
But the idea was that, you know, I guess what I wanted to do also gave me the opportunity to be more transparent about it without providing secrets or, you know, things that are deemed business crucial to me, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Right?
No, totally. Yeah. And I love how it really is something that's opening up a bigger conversation about the nature of craftsmanship in tea. You know, like I encounter this all the time when I'm teaching classes where if we're mentioning a blend, people don't think about the effort that goes into creating that recipe, right? And sourcing all those ingredients and everything, let alone the idea of how you would handle the raw ingredients in the same way that, you know, as you described how a chef transforms ingredients, how somebody who is making a chocolate bar or somebody who is making a cocktail, you know, like how they handle the raw ingredient has as much impact on the final product as the ingredient itself. And we just haven't really thought about that in tea. And I think that this is such a really eye-opening way to do so.
Well, and I think you're spot on, right? And so I'm a big fan of the chef community for a lot of reasons. And I think the tea industry could learn a lot from the culinary world right now. There's so many parallels to that, and there's so many parallels to just about everything. And I think in all aspects, you know, right now I'm sewing face masks. I can tell you what, I've got a much bigger appreciation for what it takes to make a face mask today than I did, you know, 3 weeks ago. It's no matter what you're talking about, whether it's furniture or apparel or something that will be on a menu, the more you make it, the more you're going to understand the craftsmanship and the artistry that went into that. Now, chefs, right? Chefs share a pantry. They use the same ingredients. Eggs are eggs. Now, there are some eggs that are better than other eggs, but they're still eggs, right? And so how do chefs differentiate themselves? They look at how can they alter that? How can they cook it different? How can they flavor it differently, and so on and so forth. And I think that's exactly what tea makers do. There's just nobody that's really talking about it.
Yeah. Or bringing those details to surface too. Like when you consider that baking and roasting are such important elements for a lot of different categories of tea. I mean, there are people who, of course, specialize in just roasting. There's the person who makes the oolong, and they give it to the person who does the final roasting for weeks at a time, right? So there's this layering of flavors that's super intentional, and as tea crafts people, in our own right, we have the ability, whether it's through brewing or through like what you're doing with blending, we can draw out those notes and we can emphasize them so that people are more aware of, yeah, this isn't all just like, oh, this tastes yummy. Like there's elements to this that are so intentional and so purposeful, and you can highlight that as a way of sharing story.
Yeah, precisely. So, I think, I think that, and I shouldn't say that there isn't anybody. There are people doing this for sure, and I'm sure that there's more than I'm aware of. But when I looked around, it didn't seem like there was a lot of folks that were, I guess, rolling back the curtain and showing you what goes on behind the scenes. And then there's, and there's a lot of, you've been in the industry for a long time, too. I don't think we need to dance around it. There's a lot of teas that can be found. The exact same tea can be found in 7 or 8 different brands. The same garden, comes from the same make, whatever. So I always had a problem with how do you call that mine, right? Now, marketing guys would say that you curated it or blah, blah, blah. But, to me, it just didn't feel like authentic for me to say this was my Bai Hao Oolong. Now, we had plans of putting single origin varietals up on our website. It was supposed to occur long before now. And one project led to another, and we're off our timelines. And now, who knows, right? But I was kind of challenged with how I was going to position that. I wanted, at first, I wasn't going to. I was just going to put the products that we made. So the Bai Hao that I smoked, I wasn't going to sell that to you or offer that to you, except for the smoked version that I created, right? And then I was talking to a friend of mine who happens to be a producer in Sri Lanka, and he was saying, well, you should, because there's still artistry there, and there's still craftsmanship there, and there's still a beauty there. And it would also be interesting to be able to taste it side by side to see what it was like when you bought it and what it was like when you produced it. And and I was like, I like that. And and so he swayed me into doing that. So then the challenge became, how do I talk about that? Because it's not my product, right? So, but if it's got my name on it, if I sold it to you, it is my product. I have to stand behind that. If you get it and you don't like it, I got to stand behind that and make that right. So I kind of was torn a little bit by how do I even communicate that on a website, right? And so I think, and what we decided is we're just going to, back to the transparency thing, we're just going to tell you exactly who we bought it from and where it was made and whose product it was. Now I have to stand behind it from a business, right? If I sell you a bag of Bai Hao and it arrives to you crushed or torn or something wrong with it, I got to replace it. You're my customer. But at the same time, what I am doing is just taking, tea out of a very big bag and putting it in a small bag. And I think that therein lies the issue I have with, being a packer, is being a packer or maker. I don't know. Right. So anyway, so I think where I landed was if we, we're going to just basically say, what garden it came from, who we sourced it from. Sometimes it's directly from a garden. Sometimes it's through a broker or a trader. Right. And just open up the tent, show you where we got it, and then the idea is that we would do a different tea every year. Cool. And so, except for the ones that you really love. So if a lot of people really like Holy Smoke, we'll make it again. But we already started moving on to what the 2020, teas were going to look like. Now the question becomes economy and market and business and with everything going on right now, it's hard to say what anybody should do. So we're just kind of taking a pause. But
what, so when you're talking about like the transparency issue, I really like how you're coming at it from a few different angles that I feel like as much visibility around that hasn't been really discussed. I think, transparency for, I think a lot of tea folks and tea fans is something as simple as who made it, right? And that's only a part of it. It's the whole, if you really want to get into it, it's the whole supply chain of everyone who participates in the making of this tea, so that the people who pick it, the people who produce it, the people who might roast it or do some other secondary process, who imports it, who handles it, if they're blending it, if they're crafting something with it. It's the whole thing, and it's the how those messages fit together, which I really love that you're talking about. What goes through your head when you're trying to do that gut check of, when I want to talk about something, is this still in line with my values? And at the same time, while you're also defining, or not defining, but articulating what those values are. Because I feel like for anybody who's a creator, that's like a constant, like I feel that myself, like that's a constant kind of struggle is not necessarily always the right word for it, but sometimes it feels like that. It's just something that you have to really look at all the time. How does being transparent and articulating really align with your values? And how do you decide that?
Well, okay. And I won't pretend to be a genius here by any means, or know the answers to this, Suze. I think we're kind of making it up as we go a little bit, right? And I think it's fair to say we're currently defining that for ourselves. Here's what I tell myself. Usually when I have a pause and it's, should I actually show this, or should I actually talk about this or say this? Like, for instance, offering single origin varietals and telling you who I bought them from. Usually the pause is, am I giving away too much? Am I just helping competitors do the exact same thing I'd be doing? Right. And I try really hard not to look at this as a business, but at the end of the day, I've staked a lot on this, and this is a business. And, I've literally bet the farm on this. Right. And my 2 children have to go to college someday. So I'm trying, I don't want to shoot myself in the foot, from a business perspective, but usually I try to tell myself at the end of the day, I'll just do something else, right? So for instance, if I tell you where I sourced this Baihao Oolong from, everybody loves it. Next thing you know, every brand is carrying this farmer's Baihao Oolong, and I don't have a competitive advantage there, then I'll move on to the next one, And I think sometimes it's easy to get worried or too, and I think big corporations to me do this every day in and day out. They're insecure. I have to be secured enough of who I am and what I can do that I'll come up with another idea. I'll come up with another flavor profile. I'll come up with another product, and to not fight so hard to hold on to this,
It's a scarcity mentality,
Yeah,
and it's
a little bit, I think.
a little bit. And it's something that, like, that's to try to avoid that, and at the same time, like, also being, smart for business. I think that's a real dance. Like, that's something that's kind of, sometimes it's pretty delicate. Like I've the format that I teach in, where it's new content every month and it's just kind of rolling, and I'm starting a teacher training program too. Like, I've definitely had moments where it sounds weird, like I've been afraid that if I give out all of that, what am I going to have left? And it's like, well, okay, if after working nearly 20 years in this industry, I'm afraid I'm going to run out, then I need to reevaluate what the hell I'm doing. Like, there's no way that I've spent all this time and I'm going to run out. Like you say, you go a different direction. You have to have faith in your own creative engine that you could find another way to do that.
Yep. And I think we're on the same page. And it's funny how, though, having faith in yourself is something that sometimes comes second, right? There are times where I've decided, no, I better not do that. And then I have to remind myself, no, it'll be okay. It'll be all right.
Yeah.
You know?
Oh my
We'll figure
God.
it out, you know? Yeah, you know, I think transparency is also providing information is not being transparent.
Ooh,
You
that's
know,
good. I like that.
the definition of transparency is providing whatever information is being requested or asked for or useful, right? That's transparency, is saying this is it. You know, come poke around, go through my file cabinet, look whatever you want to look at. Are we there, Talinco, yet? No, probably not. You know, I put the recipes of the blends up and where we source them, you know, from a garden perspective, but there's more information I could provide. I don't know whether the information is more useful than what's already existing out there, but
Yeah.
there can always be more, right? So I think transparency is always a goal, no matter where you're at, no matter what information you're providing, there is always more that you could be doing, right? So, you know, I think that that's just something, it's something that we're always looking towards and always trying to do better. And we have some ideas that I think are going to be pretty interesting if we're given the opportunity with, you know, the economy and everything else to continue moving along. Then I'm hoping that if we have this talk next year, you're going to say, holy shit, I didn't think you'd go there. Because I have a few ideas on how we're going to expand on the transparency front too. Like I say, we're just getting started. We launched in December, and we've been kind of chasing our tails ever since.
One thing I really like too is that for you, it seems like transparency also goes hand in hand with accessibility. You know, the way that you have presented your process so far, and that it's the behind the scenes of what it takes to do this from scratch. And I really love the honesty in that because people who are thinking right now of trying to do something for themselves, of trying to, you know, put a stake in the idea of like, I can lift myself out of this. I can do something, right? And you show that honesty of this is what it takes to do that from scratch. And so there's something to be said for, you know, you could have full transparency of all of the information, but as you know, is that really useful? And the usefulness is what makes it accessible, you know? So there's the idea of striving for accessibility of something too. Like in order to have the impact that you would like, that information that, you know, the share has to also be accessible too. Otherwise it's just kind of, it's administrative work just done very visibly, right? Like who does that benefit to know every single detail unless there's some sort of accessibility tenant there this will mean something if I share it.
Well, and I think that's the harder part, right?
Yeah.
You decide that you want to just say, okay, I'm going to share everything. You know, we also live in an age where we're being bombarded with information.
Yeah.
Our attention spans are less than they ever have been. And so choosing what information is valuable both to your goals as building your company and your customer base, as well as giving the customers information that they find useful. I won't pretend to have hit the, you know, I think that's also just a constant evolution. You're always getting better and you're learning from the people you're talking to of what was relevant and what was interesting and what was, you know, as well as what is entertaining. And I think, you know, and some people I know, some of my harshest critics say I try too hard to be entertaining and I need to be more informative. I have one and I love her to death. She is, you know, I can't do a damn thing right. She's always saying that, okay, your body language is off. And she's a professional marketer. She knows marketing, you know, like nobody's business. And, you know, she says my information isn't quite the right information and the tone isn't right and this and that. But she says, why do you keep trying to make it so entertaining? And I'm like, well, it just feels like otherwise, why would you listen? Hey, listen, in the world of tea, every single person that has a website tries to inform you where it's grown, how it's made, what is tea, all of these kind of things, right? And so when we set out, I told somebody once, and it just kind of hit or felt right to me at the time, there's hardly anybody that's trying to inspire you. Everybody's trying to educate you. What about inspiring them, right? I don't mind. My website will never have all of the details. And I don't even say Assam, India. I just say Assam. You got to Google it if you don't know where Assam is, right? It's because I don't want to be an educator. I'm not great at, you're an educator. I'm not, and so I try to give enough information that makes you interested and that hopefully will make you want to look up a few things and reference a few things, maybe. But the goal is really to keep you interested, not to educate in a way.
Mm-hmm. Which I think is also really valid too, because the engagement with something, the ability to come back to it and to make it really part of your life, not just something that you get once and you're like, okay, that's kind of cool, but you really want to keep doing it. That has to be part of the message too.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
When you were...
Hey, real quick.
Oh, sure.
Pour that real quick. I'm just going to throw a log on the fire because it's getting cold.
Oh no, it went out in the background.
There's something really romantic about having a wood stove for a heater, but it is a lot of work.
Yeah, I absolutely love it. And at the same time, I think I would like it to be something where if I was cooking or I wanted the room to be heated that way, that's awesome, but I didn't need to have that be my main source of heat.
No, so our little tea kitchen, our little mini factory, it's nestled on 5 acres south of Oregon City. We're out in the middle of the country, and it's, for the most part, it's mostly all trees. We've got a lot of wood all around us. I only had 60 amps of electricity to play with, to work with.
Wow.
Yeah, so we run our entire tea operation on less power than a person uses on their furnace, usually for their home.
Holy cow.
But where we had to, make some sacrifices, one was heat, right? Is, an electric heater, and there's no natural gas lines or anything like that out here. So an electric heater would be our only option. And so we chose to we got this Swedish-made wood stove that's super high efficiency with hopes of not, adding more pollution to the air. And we do our best and I have a wood shop because I've been making furniture nearly my entire life. And so scraps and cutoffs, as well as, the wind is always kicking stuff down into the yard. So we basically just spend most of our life cleaning up brush and burning it for fuel. It keeps the boys busy, keeps them outside, and keeps me active and warms up the space. So.
Well, I love it because it comes through in the message of how you've built your tea here too. That kind of naturey, outdoorsy vibe. Like I feel like it's really, I guess what I really enjoy about your approach, I'm kind of like bringing this together the way that the way that I see it. It feels like it's really you coming through. It's not something that you have put out there that is a version of what you could do that is, albeit however nice, like a stylized, presentation. It's not the same like when you look at websites it's all white and it's just very like serene, like a picture of a leaf, or a picture of a pile of tea, and that's replicated throughout the whole website. Like that's a the minimalist thing. That's like a trend right now, right? So anytime somebody's doing that, they're being very timely, yes, but you kind of wonder, like, I wonder what this person's like as a person. Like, who are they outside of what's on their website right now? And I really love that this feels like you, and like your videos and the photos and everything that you share, like that feels like that's like a pretty real chunk of you on the line right there. And I think that's really rad.
Well, and I'll be honest, it is mostly because I don't have the experience nor honestly the intelligence or capability to do it otherwise. So when we decided to launch a tea company. All right. what is our, and so I started talking to some folks smarter than I in business and marketing and sales. And, you know, like anybody, you go around and you talk to, you know, friends and allies and folks, and you try to gather as much intelligence as you can, and you want to do it right. Right. So what are the big questions? The big questions are, so how is your tea going to be different than anybody else's? And I'm like, you know, what kind of tea are you going to make? And I'm like, I don't know quite yet. It's going to be good. It's going to taste great. You know, I'm not quite sure. Well, how are you going to change the world? I'm like, change the world? Shit, I just want to make tea, right? And then it comes to, so what's the brand voice? And so I have a style guide. I really do. It's a 4-page document that a photographer friend of mine put together because he felt sorry for me that I didn't have a style guide for my brand. Right? And the style guide basically says, I'm not going to have any shots of a cup, you know, or this is never going to be in my, you know, kind of photography. I'm not going to have a cup in a bowl with a bunch of loose leaves scattered about on a table, right? Because that is so obviously staged. That it's like, well, how does that make you want to have a cup of tea, right? In a way. Now, I would also say that after I've gotten started, being the kind of the artist perfectionist that I am, I've allowed myself to become a little too staged, even for my own liking. Some of the stuff that I've done lately has started to lose some of its organic feel to it. And it's because there's some amazing photographers out there and some beautiful imagery. And I don't really know how to use a camera that well. I've learned a lot in the last year. And, you know, but I want it to look beautiful. I want it to look cool. I want it to be interesting. And so it's hard to find that balance between what's going on in your day and a glimpse of your life and, okay, maybe moving a piece of furniture or something else, because really what happens in your life isn't as pretty as it would be if you just move this piece of furniture over or if you've got this natural light to shine in.
It is so hard. It really is hard. Like several years into this now, I still really struggle with that. And I get annoyed when something looks too staged for me. And it's really, especially when you're dealing with like the shit we are right now, to be in that headspace of present moment. How do I photograph this scene in a way that looks nice without effing with it too much? It's hard. It's really hard.
Yeah. And then I'll be honest with you. Don't put this. Well, yeah. Okay. You
well,
put it on the air.
I mean,
but I'll tell you what, nothing you think that, you know, putting all your savings into something and buying a bunch of teas before you even know what you're going to do with them, and then finding customers and cash flow and all of the things that go with any typical business. Those are stressful to me, but really not that stressful. What's really stressful to me is Instagram and social media.
Yeah. I hear that.
I literally lose some sleep to it. And I've started to get to the point where I've almost pulled out a couple times and just said, you know, because it's starting to it's starting to take over in a way, where it was intended to be, this is what's going on in a tea lab. This is what's going on in a tea factory. But then, of course, I do have a desire to make things as pretty as I can. I do have a desire to make things as cool as I can. And so where do you draw a line, right? There was a shot I took, you know, it was one of my favorite shots. It's definitely like a shot that you wouldn't see any other tea company doing, right? I basically just put a cup of black tea on top of an engine of my pickup truck and took a shot of it, right? Because I was going in to try and figure out what was rattling underneath the hood. And I opened it up, and there's this big like sticker that says like, I can't remember now. It says power or strength or horsepower or something that, you know. And I was all like, oh, that's perfect for this black tea I'm drinking, right? And so I set it down in there. I take a photo of it. Now, that was actually not staged in a way. I had the tea in my hand, and I was naturally opening up, you know, the car hood. But then, you know, several others have gotten to a point where you see something, you're like, that looks cool. But then after you take the picture, you realize there's a shadow being cast from the bench that's on the other side of the room. So you move the bench, and next thing you know, you've rearranged all of the furniture in your space to take this one freaking photo. And I don't know if you saw, but before the World Tea Expo was canceled, I was going to teach a class on doing
I
videography and stuff.
did.
And
Such an awesome
I was
class.
going to be very open and honest about that, because I do think that that's something everybody should pay attention to. Social media is something that can become a bigger aspect than the product you're making, in a way. And I'll bet there's a lot of companies out there that do put more resources into their social media platform than the actual product. And I don't want to do that. I don't want to do that at all. And so, I think one of your questions you were preparing me to answer was, what are some things that you didn't know what you were doing when you got engaged?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I didn't know anything about social media. I still don't really. I don't know anything about photography other than I've taken probably 12,000 photos, and I take a photo and I adjust some knobs until I like the way it looks, but I couldn't tell you what I'm doing. Videography was something I just kind of stumbled into, and it's a long story, but I was working on a podcast and I had to get audio out of a video. I was Skyping somebody like we're doing today and talking to them, and I wanted to export the audio, and I started playing around with this software that I got, an free app online. And next thing you know, I was like, shit, you can make videos with this. And so then one thing led to another. And the first video we ever did was literally me on a conference call. I was on a 3-hour conference call with 4 salesmen for this consulting gig I was doing. And I wanted to do something or post something on Instagram. And I knew that I was going to be on the phone for 4 hours. So I just stuck my phone and a couple cameras around and just photographed me on hold and talking to these guys. And then I sped it up, and my style was born right there. But it's a balance between what I'm capable of doing and what I'd like to do, and then adding as much style as I can to make it entertaining. And the sound and stuff. My youngest is into GarageBand on the iPad.
Oh, nice.
So we'll sit around and we'll make beats, and he'll dance to it and whatnot. And so I started playing around with GarageBand. And, at Smith Teamaker, one of the bigger arguments I was always getting into with the marketing department is paying for music for stuff, right? And I kept saying, let's get something cooler, and nobody would want to pay, $65 for audio.
No one wants to pay for art in any form. It's
so well, and it can get expensive. I'm not trying to put that, but and so I was playing around one night, and I'm like, why aren't we just making our own music? Charlie, you're gonna help me? And he's like, he's 4, and at the time he was 4, and he's like, yeah, I'll help you. And so we started, developing little beats, and that's what we put to our videos. So.
One thing I wanted to talk to you about as someone with a really, a new business, even though coming from someone who has, worked in business development and has seen a lot of like the process of where you've seen the process of what this looks like 5-10 years from now, so there's something to be said for the idea that your experience prepares you for this, and there's like the saying that what we've already lived through prepares us for what we're living through now. That's like our toolkit that we're relying on. And I just wanted to ask, like, with a new business right now, with what's going on, how do you feel about that idea that what you've done has prepared you for? Does it feel like that's accurate, or?
Yes and no. I think it always does, right? And I would say, so throughout the 20 years I've been in tea, I have taken classes on some business stuff, negotiation and procurement and contract management and supplier stuff, as well as a host of quality assurance stuff. But I've also taken classes. I did a tailoring class, learned how to, make suit jackets and stuff like that. Have done, a number of sewing related, because it's always been a hobby of mine. Have taken cooking classes, have taken classes at wineries on how to make wine, how to press oils. I think the mindset is what prepared me. The mindset, which is, you're not going to know what you need to know, so learn how to learn it, or find out how to learn it, you know. I didn't know how to make video work prior to this, but I knew how to kind of go about learning it, or to where to look, at least. Maybe a bad example, because that's a pretty easy one. But, you know, but most of what I did, I was part of two big teams, right? Tazo and Smith Teamaker. Both of those companies were, you know, fueled and funded by investors for major growth. I'm not. And, you know, so I'm more in an unknown than I think I even give credit for, in a way. You know, Smith Teamaker, Tazo were both get investment, get to this level of growth, and then take on more investment, get to this level of business, then take on more investment. And your expenses and your profit were just getting ratcheted up as you kind of grew, but you're paying for that growth. And in order to grow fast, you have to pay for it like that. I'm not a pro by any means. I've witnessed it occurring, but I couldn't tell you exactly how to do it properly. And so we decided early on, you know, why did we build our own facility? Because I had more time than money. And because I wanted something unique that was my own, and that was a reflection of kind of my style, in a way. But it was primarily because, you know, that's what our resources would allow us to do. How does Telinco grow? Slowly, and word of mouth. And, you know, I'm not going to be putting thousands of dollars into marketing campaigns or advertisement campaigns. I'm not signing up a big distributor on the East Coast to deliver product to 2,000 people. The carton you're holding in your hand right there takes a long time to make. Sorry, you weren't holding your hand. It was on your counter.
Oh, no, but I mean, like, they really are. Like, I wanted to show folks, like, what goes into them. I mean, like, this bottom piece here that's got, like, a little rivet with a thread that's a pull tab. You know, each one of the tees, it has, like, a little clip that it comes with.
Yeah, so that ribbon cuts on a big spool, right? And we cut each of those ribbon into 0.75 inches in length, and then we fold each one. We put it into that little hole. We punch a hole in the thing. We apply the rivet. We set the rivet. We fold the box. We apply the labels to the cello bag. We form the cello bag. We put the tea in the cello bag. It's not a product for mass distribution. It's not a product that would be scalable very easily. My goal wasn't to build a national brand. My goal wasn't to build a product that you're going to be able to find on every store shelf in North America, even with a lot of help. My goal was to try and create something that hasn't been made before as much as I could. Be different or die. That's, you know, and a photographer said that a long time ago. And, you know, that's something that's kind of been a overarching theme of my entire life is we got a lot of the same shit all around us in every aspect of our lives, you know, and adding wood to that fire makes no sense to me. The only way to do that, the only reason to do that is if you're looking to, you know, grow a business from a profit and loss standpoint and to make money, you know, and I'll be honest, I probably shouldn't be. My goal in this isn't to make a lot of money. My goal is to continue learning. I do believe that there is a craft and a skill here that is cool, right? Tea makers, tea bliers, tea blenders, however you want to describe them, the people that are tasting raw materials and putting recipes together, and whether they're replicating a recipe in a formulation practice, there's an art to that and a science to that that's just fun and cool. And you don't ever really hear about that all that much. I think, what is it? The Twinings has like $1 million insurance policy on their taster. And that's complete marketing bullshit. But it's the closest thing to talking about, in a way, what goes on behind the scenes other than packing or applying, you know, tea into a tea bag or into a tin, right? It's the closest thing that the industry is doing right now of showing the world that there's actually a skill and an art going on back there, right?
That's very true, because especially a lot of the imagery that we see for brands right now is origin related, which is also, I mean, a huge value. Obviously, but there's but you're saying like there's this section that we haven't really looked. We've just been overlooking the importance of that, the artistry of that.
Exactly, and and I don't want to, I don't mean to suggest that the imagery, the information, and the artistry that's occurring in Origin shouldn't be promoted.
No, but it's
No,
all the tea
it's
story.
fantastic stuff. Absolutely. But I just think there's an opportunity to show that it's bigger than that. And back to, we were talking about chefs and distillers. Look at the chef community and what they've done to. I mean, chefs are almost rock stars these days, and in the end, what they do isn't that different in a way. Now, of course, they've got, they're using heat and a bunch of other techniques and stuff. And I'm not trying to suggest that the two are the exact same, but they do have a similar mindset going into it. And every time I've worked with a chef or anybody that's got any kind of a culinary background, they always walk away saying, wow, I had no idea this much went into making tea, right?
Yeah.
And that's just because, we all are the same no matter what, right? I don't really understand what goes into something until I do it, right? But
yeah, that ability to learn and the ability to navigate what you need to learn, I feel that's such an important takeaway for right now. You mentioned before about video, learning how to do video, and God, so many people are in that right now where they're trying to figure out, okay, well, there's some component of what I do that can be facilitated online. How do I do that? And just figuring out the steps to put one in front of the other. How do I learn that? That's such a huge thing right now.
Yeah, we use, and I think, I imagine it's going to become more and more, well, it's obviously going to become more and more competitive on the World Wide Web. And, and I think it'll be interesting to see how information and content changes as, you have less of a chance to reach a customer, an audience, or a participant. And then when you do reach them, you're probably going to have even less time. Because they have 100 others that they're looking for. And I think right now in what, week 2 of the U.S. crisis, I'm trying hard not to think about it too much. It's easy to start thinking about all these what ifs and how the world's going to be changed and how can I adapt to be better prepared for that. I'm trying to just take a deep breath and let's see how the next couple of weeks go, and let's see how the next 2-3 months go. But I think it'll be different. I mean, this is one of those things. It's kind of like 9/11. Life will never be the same, Yeah.
It's a very strange bubble of time to be in, where you realize that looking back on this, we're going to refer to it as before and after. And so many things within that between are going to change. They're going to evolve, and it's damn hard to keep a forward movement at the same time that you don't know what you're moving into. But I feel like somehow figuring out that's the creative spirit, that's the moving forward that helps. That's the balm for it. It doesn't solve everything, but being involved with making something, with crafting something, with just kind of suspending what's going on outside for a little bit so that you can immerse yourself in your tea or your craft or whatever you're doing. That's the balm.
Yeah. And, there's, the one thing that I feel like I've studied in my own use of that term is the creative process. It's something that I've looked at intensely for 10 years or so, and everybody's is a little bit different, don't get me wrong, but there's some common threads that go through there. And the creative process for me, for my brain, I'm the type that has to find an activity that keeps part of my brain occupied, not a whole lot, but just a little bit. It's usually manual labor of some kind, raking, shoveling, sanding, planing, something that requires attention. You can't just, close your eyes and do it, but at the same time, something that doesn't require a lot of thought. So that, the physical activity, and I think this comes back to, I was a drama major, and one of the things that I learned when I was trying to, remember lines for a play is, one of the best ways to memorize something is to like bounce a ball while you're memorizing it. Do something to keep part of your
Yeah.
brain occupied so that the other part is doing it. Because when you're on stage, it's not like you're going to have your entire brain. You're going to be focused on where you're walking, where the lights are, where your cues are, and all this kind of stuff. And so you have to be able to have this kind of firing happen, without, during that distraction, right? So that led me to this thing on the creative side, and I started making projects in the wood shop while I had big projects going on at Smith Teamaker. When I didn't quite know which direction I wanted to take, one of the first maker series, where we were trying to create a tea that kind of felt like a scoop of vanilla ice cream, and I remember I was working on a coffee table for a woman down in Bend, actually, Oregon. And I remember just having so many aha moments when I was just planing this, I think it was a vertical grain fir. And from ever since then, anytime I have a big question mark as to what to do, I try to find a project that requires a whole lot of manual labor. And I just dive into it, right? And it kind of keeps me focused, and it kind of keeps me just enough of my brain occupied where the other isn't just scrambling from a what if to what if. I don't know if that made sense, but that's
super helpful. That's really helpful.
It's part of my secret in a way, is I always try to stay busy whenever I'm in a project. And so, from the outside, my wife would say, you always have 2 or 3 projects going on, but really I have one. These other ones are just to help me kind of to do something while I'm trying to figure out the one.
Something comes into focus when you're able to just take your attention off of it for a little bit. Something rattles loose in that space of time that you're diverting your attention. If you only focus on that one thing, your brain is just not. It's not meant for unitasking in that kind of way. Like it's just too much activity. It wants crosstalk. So when you're working with your body, that's creating the both with the body as well as with the mind, that internal crosstalk, and that's how you get those connections better.
Yeah, exactly. And nearly every kind of breakthrough thought moment I've had in my career has been had during exercise or some type of a project where I'm busy, and so movement, projects, busy work, and and travel are the ways that I stay inspired and work through, whenever I have a creative roadblock. And so, I think a week ago, when schools are getting shut down, restaurants are shuttering, there's all sorts of what ifs, and the unknown is bigger than the known as to what the next 6 months to a year is going to look like both from a family and a father, as well as a business owner. So I was standing in the shop thinking about, God, what should I do? And that's when I saw I have sewing machines. Like I think I said earlier, I've taken a lot of classes. I used to make my own clothes and snowboarding equipment and stuff. And so I have sewing machines, and I was thinking, and I've been reading about the shortages of, masks, and I've got a ton of cotton. And so, I decided I'm going to make masks. And so I took a day to kind of clean them up and get them all oiled and ready to rock. And then I started sewing. And while I'm sewing, I'm thinking about, what does 2020 look like, and what makes sense, both from a business as well as a customer. And, I think it helps me right now, because back to, social media being dangerous in a way, I have a tendency to feel an obligation from a business to publish something. Like, I should have a post a day. I should have something there, right? And what do you post when you don't have anything that's really engaging in your own head, right? And that's where I think, and there's plenty of you could be looking at my feed right now, and I'm sure I would point at a few where I would say I shouldn't have done that one. There's been times where I posted something because I felt like I had to, or that I should, because that was the right business thing, is to keep people engaged and to try and keep my name out there, right? But yet, not necessarily. And I do believe that the right content, even if it's less, is better than having a lot of content that's mediocre. At least I hope, because I think the world would be a better place if that's the case. But so sewing just was a way for me to keep my mind off of it and whatnot, and feel like I was kind of contributing or trying to help. You know, we've made about 65 masks, which isn't a whole lot, right? In the goal of 100 million, right? But it definitely feels good that I'm doing something.
Mm-hmm.
And in the meantime,
More
we're trying to figure out what the next step is.
Yeah, I mean, if more people pitched in and did those little things, then that effort adds up.
Yeah, and I think I'm actually also optimistic, or I feel good that we're starting to see from the CDC and other people that it's recommended that everybody wear one when they're out and about.
Yep.
We've been feeling that way for more than 2 weeks now, and it just feels like it's common sense. Store clerk shelves, or people that work at stores should not be ringing people up and having people walk up 3 feet in front of them without some kind of protective gear on. Not if our goal is to really flatten the curve, right?
Yeah.
And we all can't stay home for the whole year, so we have to figure out a way to start operating and figure out how to do this without increasing transmission rates. So yeah.
So I feel like it's nice that what we learned through that process of figuring out creatively what works for us in past situations can be something that we can apply to what's going on right now. It's not the thing that's going to magically make it all go away or magically make our businesses come back or anything like that, but it does provide that sense of direction going forward, that doing it's like the North Star that helps you feel like, okay, this going this way feels a lot better than just kind of ignoring and posting like usual on social media like nothing's going on. Like, it feels better to go with the direction.
Yeah. And social media, I think right now I feel the only thing I can say is I feel bad trying to sell anybody anything right now. With what everybody's going on in the world, I feel slimy going out and saying, check out this product you should buy. And so I'm really just kind of scratching my head as to what to do social media wise. And I think, we started doing, well, I'll tell you, you'll probably see it here, hopefully in the next day, but we started just recording stories, travel stories. The first one's going to be how this rickshaw driver took me for 100 rupees in India, but it's but they're just stories. There's no real moral to them. There's no real angle. They're just, I think, somewhat funny and stories that I think anybody can relate to. And we're just going to see see what people think of that. And if people like them, we'll do a few more. But yeah. I am glad to see folks that are trying to do some positive things, because I think we need a lot of positivity in the world right now, and so the best thing I can do is just kind of share some examples of where I've made some piss poor mistakes and embarrassing situations for myself and was taken by a number of people, and let you laugh on my behalf. Right. And hopefully.
I love it. I think it's awesome. I mean, and that's also similar to my goal of being here and sharing your story too. It's not like I'm not being paid as a sponsored post to like talk about your teas or share your teas, but I feel like if folks are looking for something to inspire them, and folks are looking for how to learn a process or somebody else's process in making something, and someone who is actually talking about that, as opposed to just imagery, like at that point, it's the value of it goes well beyond like the value of it being a good product or it being a really damn good tea, and like, don't get me wrong, like the Best Coast breakfast is like, it's a freaking phenomenal breakfast blend, right? Like, bravo, like that's amazing. And to support somebody else who's a small business and who's being really damn real about that process, like, we need to hear from that. We need to hear from folks like you. So I really thank you for being here and for sharing your story. I think I hope it'll be helpful for others who are looking for what comes next, looking for, well, what do I do now? You know?
Yeah. Well, no, I appreciate it, and really kind words. And I think that the thing I worried the most is having a beautiful package and the product didn't stand up to it, right? I mean, I want to make sure that the product inside is always worth a lot more than the beautiful package, even though I for me, the package has to be beautiful too. But, but no, I really appreciate it and the opportunity to talk to you. It's always been a treasure. And, yeah. And, I hope that anybody out there interested in getting into a space where they're crafting something, hopefully they got some kind of a value out of the rambling nonsense that is my head. But I appreciate it.
Yeah, no. And by the way, like our oolong friend here, God, I think I've steeped it like 15 times now. Like, I mean, it's really that tea keeps on going. I got 5 grams here in the Gaiwan. It's not like I loaded it. It's a normal amount of tea, but holy crap.
So, do you know Jason Chin, right? In Seattle? And that's his Baihao Oolong.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, he's been a friend of mine for many years, and he and his family are just sweethearts. I started working with him when his daughter was like yay high. Now she's now she's graduated college, but he's a very, very good friend of mine. He's been consistently making some wonderful teas for the 20 some years I've known him, and so we had to work with his Baihao Oolong. It's one of my favorites. So.
Well, it's a really damn good tea. So hats off to him. So. Well, thank you so much for being here and for sharing your story. That was really delightful.
Oh, thanks for the opportunity. Take care. Stay healthy, be well, and stay in touch.
You as well. Yeah, you as well. Thank you so much, Tony.
Thank you.
And thanks everyone else for viewing and for supporting our program here. I just want to note at the end, so if you are interested to engage more with tea community and learn more about how to bring tea into your everyday life, from learning how to brew tea and skills like that, or learning tea for meditation or for mindfulness and stress reduction, which is a huge thing right now. I encourage you to consider becoming a member of Being Tea. So patreon.com/Being Tea is where you can find my membership program. And membership includes access to new classes every single month, as well as live events, which I'm starting to do more of now in times where we need more community. We need more places where we can all gather and be together, even if it's at a distance. Last weekend, I did an all-day tea retreat online, which was 7 hours of tea workshops, and it was amazing. And members have access to that included in their membership. So if you're looking for more tea life, I would love to have you join me, because this is definitely not possible without the support of viewers like you, helping to support tea life and helping to keep small businesses like me afloat during these times. So I'm honored to have you here. Thanks for viewing, and I will see you for our next interview coming up very soon. Take care.